Chapter 7 The Siblings and the Swords. Emba's aqueous body never felt more amazing than it had at this moment. All the heat flushed itself from Nu's system, leaving nothing behind but a quietly settled resolve. Automatically, at the contact of Nu and the water, they began to heal and become even stronger. With a modest glow, Nukolo's honey-golden irises flashed in affirmation, sparking up their ambitions for the open lake ahead. Strangely, the heat from the venom had somehow made them forget all about its source, the fangs. It was time to remove them. To free their hands in preparation, they sent the jars into two remotely controlled bubbles in order to prevent them from sinking by slicing open the water surrounding them with a blade of air. The resulting bubbles jiggled, then steadied, with both jars calibrated in their centers. Then, with scapular muscles that had been habitually strengthened by propelling the body through the lake for the past 16 seasons, Nu raised their arms far above and behind their head. The fangs were lodged directly into their heart, from the upper back, through the spine, and right between the shoulder blades. Had it not been for the constant swimming, the Emmen's muscles may not have had the strength. Had it not been for the ability to make something from nothing, the Emmen may not have been able to see the strength for what it was in the first place. Had it not been for the spirit of the ocean, Ananti's medicine may not have been able to run through. With a steady grip on the parts protruding from their back and charged with generous intention, the Emmen used the power in their shoulder blades to slowly excise both fangs from their chest cavity, pulling slowly up and out. Pain seared from the heart to the extremities, taunted by the reacting heart's steady tempo. Pain seared from the heart to the extremities, taunted by the reacting heart's speedy tempo, yet empowered by its drive. After the longest few seconds ever, the fangs were completely free from the stone heart they once pierced, and that heart is no longer a stone and is no longer lonesome. Water rushed in to heal Nu's chest, leaving nothing but two scars, one on their chest and one on their back. The bottoms of these new weapons bore the roots of the teeth, shaped like aerodynamically designed handles. With a blade edged in serrations and curved upward, the silhouette echoed of a scimitar. Only each fang also tapered into hollow tips, offering the last bit of venom to whoever was on the other side of the sword. The texture felt comfortable in Nukolo's hands, and both fangs' masses were evenly distributed to both sides of the upper body. Suddenly, the thought of returning to the ocean returned to their mind. Anticipatory sensations sizzled throughout the irises of Nu as they scoured the lake for the sea that fed it. Was this the seeking of the embrace Ananti said they would learn for themselves, the embrace of their own mind? Or was this something else entirely, something more desperate for its own becoming? Nukolo shuddered in sheer denial of the possibilities of what the feeling could be. The water surrounding them shuddered in kind. In pursuit of that eerie echo, the molecules began to assemble themselves in a peculiar formation. They honed in on the bubbles holding the jars, then formed needle-like icy protrusions for the sake alone of popping the illusions of their enchanted isolations. Whilst whirling about their targets, their velocities increased until finally, implosion. Emba's waters rushed in on the vacuum, where the only remnants of the jars were shards of illustrious white and luminous black broken pieces. They glittered in the sunlight before reassembling themselves as two steadily spiraling whirlpools. The nacreous shards were the first to reinstate their form, pulling two obsidian shards from their sibling into their orbit, while also offering two of their own. As the two vortices entwined around one another in a sacred dance, their trade was recorded within the memory of the water. Then, the shards of nacre condensed, white light accumulating throughout their surfaces and igniting a fusion process, which bound them along an axis of symmetry, a spine. At the end of it, the shape that formed was of a pearly white whelp, only about the size of Nukolo's fist. The young dragon blinked at Nu as if to take an eternal photo of the moment of first contact. Those two small black holes of eyes opened wide, filling themselves to the brim with light from the Emin's magenta aura. Nukolo blinked back, and their eyes of gold left lingering photons in the eyes of the hatchling. "Oteni," whispered the water. "Oteni," whispered Nukolo. The sibling whirlpool of obsidian and two nacre followed with the recalibration of their broken pieces into a dragon body, in perfect complement to Oteni's monochrome. "Hiake," spoke the water. "Hiake," spoke Nukolo. His two moon-like eyes met and traded some of their photons for the eminence light, just as his sister had previously, after a solid blink at Nukolo. Hiake looked upon Oteni with admiration and gratitude. The white dragon had opened the door for the black one. Oteni tested the waters, so to speak. Because of the telepathic link between their bodies, Hiake knew the lake was safe as soon as his sister did, following right behind her once the calmness was confirmed. This initial energetic exchange fortified the already solid bond between the twin souls. Indeed, they were fated to be karmically interdependent. The crystals with which their bodies were formed had come from the same stone family. One's eyes were made of the other's body, and vice versa. Thus, their fates could only be written together. Their black obsidian was created from fire, heat, and cooling, while their white nacre was born from preservation. The obsidian was sharp and focused, yet brittle. The nacre was rough and tough, yet yielding. Each reflected the other in perfectly mirrored quantities. Where Hiake's eyes bore their translucence, so did Oteni's body. Where Oteni's eyes bore their opacity, so did Hiake's body. The motion of her lakehood, combined with the pressure of his dragonhood, succeeded in creating the siblings to be only fully complete in relation to the integrality of the other, mirroring their parents' fated dynamic. While the inherent duality of their siblinghood proved itself as medicine by its own right, the real cure lay dormant in the recesses of their shared potential, only to be realized in this life by the fulfillment of their pupils' evolution. In this case, the grand evolver was none other than Nukolo, latest emissary of Emba. The two dragons swam to Nukolo's back, each of them clinging to a shoulder blade with small, jagged claws. They were featherweights, especially underwater, and Nu felt no physical resistance in holding them up. What was rather difficult to support, however, was the sudden influx of their thought forms crossing the skull of the eminent and coursing their way through the brain as fast as thought conceivably could. At first, the transmissions were heavy, even for the emin. But after sanctifying inner boundaries and embedding their own presence more deeply into their own body, Nukolo was able to interpret each intention with greater clarity. Still, the most prominent feelings were felt through the swords: heat and cold, closeness and distance, dryness and wetness. The lines in Nukolo's palms received the smooth electric green hilts, trickling energy up and through the forearms, biceps, and shoulders until finally the sensations reached the two clinging witnesses on their shoulder blades. Their tiny but powerful claws reacted to the energy, digging into Nukolo's back. When a bit of blood was drawn, Nu felt a rush of deeper connection between the two hemispheres of their brain, resulting immediately in vastly improved coordination. This would last, provided Nukolo stay empathically connected to their two new attachments. And further, this connection would prevail, provided Nu remember to never forget the names of their siblings. At first, the language of the siblinghood harbored no words, but only feelings that were best understood in the medium of water. An energetic bubble formed around them, both shielding them from any outside forces and reinforcing their bond. The bubble was invisible to anyone but them, and only they understood its specific needs for maintenance, enrichment, and enhancement. There was much to remember, much to embrace, and much lost time to recover. So, the brother and sister nodded their heads, knowing exactly what to do next. Their claws dug a bit deeper into Nu's shoulders, relinquishing a small piece of the pain of their connection by liquefying their crystalline bodies into microscopic drops, just small enough to be able to fit within and throughout the eminent's pores. Having these two elemental crystals injected into one's skin and through to the bone was oppressively painful. Still, Nukolo stayed steadfast in receiving both the wills and the woes of their siblings. How could one not when one knew the gravity of the blessing of the revival of their sacred relationship? Once forgotten, to now be remembered. Once separate, now together. Once lost, now a faithfully found treasure. The crystals ran their lengths from the marrow of their bones to the pores of their skin, then dispersed beyond the body's final boundary. At first, they were thin strands, like a web of wild, silvery hair connected to an inner framework. But as they thickened and continued structuring themselves, the goal of their inner vision shapes revealed itself to be a feather. The goal of their inner vision shapes revealed itself to be a feather. After having fully ensconced themselves over the shoulders and arms of the eminent, their pattern began to undulate alongside the movements of Nukolo's inner concentrated will, a routine that danced with every micro-expression of the surrounding water. Nu's bond to these molecules was so pure in essence that it created temporally perfect pockets of potential, which tunneled directly into the eminent's heart. These pockets would one day enable the Numen to receive their deepest desires at any moment they'd will it. But, with their will still shrouded by their woe, there was time in between which demanded living. Here and now, there persisted an energetic quality of cause overcoming effect, and seething viciously from the mysterious filaments through the arms and into the ends of the swords that Nu still held firmly in each hand. The surges bounced back and forth throughout their lengths, plateauing in potency. And yet, you know not the names of the swords. The brother and sister, still one with their stones, despite the transformative merging, spoke in unison in a hypnotically vague yet transparent tone. Hiake's voice emitted from the obsidian wing, and Oteni's from the nacre. But individually, it was as if there was one little speaker for each and every stone feather on Nukolo's wings. Swords of illness and wellness, state your truth. The feathers billowed with the might of their many voices. Then the swords polarized one another in temperature, the right igniting to solar vigor, while the left chilled into lunar introspection. The right sword spoke to its wielder, "I am wellness." The left sword spoke in kind, "I am illness. You need both of us to survive." Hearing them speak those words together soothed a spot in Nukolo that was whimpering to the world for tender, loving connection for far too long. At the mentioning of the twin blades' superfluous bond, There was something of a lesion that burst in the Emin's mind. "Do you want to let it out?" Hiake asked the Emin in a peaceful tone, his voice reverberating through Nu's right arm, which was, by now, fully blackened by the obsidian protectorate. The feathers of the past had now settled into scales that sank deep into the skin of Nu, layering themselves in a pattern fit for both defense and hydrodynamics. The only parts of their arm left untouched by this igneous armor were the layers of nacre spread throughout each fingernail, which was once and is still Hiake's eyes. Their left arm bore the opposite, nacre fulfilling the skin and muscles, with obsidian fingernails at the ends. The arms, like their previous incarnation in the dragons, were perfect reflections. The crystal sheaths met at the scar in the center of the Emin's upper back, swirling in on one another like two whirling vortices of fateful consumption. The twin dragons had become not only the arms of Nu, but the army and the armor as well, deferring their minds exclusively to their adopted siblings' needs, which in turn deferred their actions to the will of her lakehood, who deferred her character to the will of the spirit of the ocean, which lived most focused inside Nu's chest. "I want to," Nukolo stated plainly, "but I don't want to taint the world." Hiake took a moment to contemplate, then elucidated an argument that Nu couldn't refute. Was the world tainted when the world took a part of you for itself, saw you as a beautifully precious newborn, created solely in the image and likeness of God, and took what you couldn't even have known at that time was precious to you? Hiake's voice was heightened in scope and volume by Oteni, who joined the speech around halfway in. Together, their voices completed one another, intimidation and serenity marking their cadence. The thunder of their tone was only intended to heal, not to comfort. Thus, flashes of pain emerged from lives that Nu forgot they'd ever even lived. They shrieked at their woes. They shrieked their woes to the Emin as if to call to some unmet promise needing fulfillment, some lie needing understanding, and a bond needing rebalance. But how and why? The arms spoke in glory. "For your sake, know that your deepest heart's deepest parts recognize you as the same thing. Let it be that you hold yourself and behold yourself Let it be that you hold yourself and behold yourself as God holds and beholds you, for you are worthy so long as you remember the divine breathes you as your very every breath." A deep sigh let itself out of Nukolo's lungs, further affirming the twins' point. It was born from, down, and throughout their bronchioles, cells, and the finest parts that made up their respiratory system, skin included. Bubbles rushed from their mouth and pores, as if to emancipate the very last part of the Emin that held fast to benign rebellion. Obedience, sanctified with its kindest regards, was now free to flow throughout Emba's currents. At last, in the flames of the imperishable newness of perception, the eternal death had died. And this also meant that eternal birth was birthed. The lives that riled their problems into Nu's psyche were calmed and redeemed in the embrace of virginal alliance. What once had been shackled and shorn now clanged its broken chains throughout the vacancy of her calmly joyous waters, keeping the ego at sea level while evaporating all that it wasn't. Each and every strand of Nukolo's web of incarnational engagement represented a lifeline. Each lifeline bestowed its orientation to the web that was a dream catcher that could only ever catch the dreamer. But if a dreamer never slept in the first place, could they still be called dreams? Could they still be caught, caressed, and cultivated? If secrets were never meant to be kept, could they ever be considered lost? OceanHeart. The voices of the arms resounded in borderless range, capturing the listener betwixt their most varying pitches with a mirror of inquisition. By commanding the attention of the one they tied to the title, their echoes came to a halt as soon as the eminent opened their mouth. "OceanHeart," Nukolo repeated. "OceanHeart." The arms now exclusively spoke as one, held together faithfully by the heart of Nu, and sprouted from the wings of their beholding. No longer was there any separation between sibling, and sibling. The skin and the scales had become one, fused as a super-durable material that still breathed water through its layers in humble memoriam of its modest origin. Thank you, water. Okay. Who is OceanHeart, or what is OceanHeart? The eminent inquired, while the lids of their glowing eyes shut gently. The light emanating from their skin dimmed in kind, as if to respect the body's choice in subtle reflection. The arms crossed and held the hilts of their blades in firm fists below the armpits, leaving no space for movement, the pose forming a silhouette of calm while uptight introspection. Hiake and Oteni converse with one another, appreciating Nu's heart as the central intelligence unit of their information network. Nukolo persisted in quiet meditation as an unbiased observer, allowing their back and forth to be truly uninfluenced by inner forces. You are the OceanHeart. You are the thread of diversity spun upon the loom of life, which saturates all end products with the dye of dignity. The self-respect of intertwining minds is your strength, and the resistance of the naturality of denaturing is your weakness. The heart of the ocean must be met with no resistance, for it is all that will begin us all once more. The Emin absorbed the intention in those words slowly and deliberately, while gripping the hilts of the blades even tighter. Their body ascended to the surface of the lake, pushed up by legs that waded in oneness with the water, until a crimson forehead beamed its psychic luster under the golden dawn, both nourished and chilled by the cool lake breeze. Their brow furrowed in either slight denial of this everlasting truth or final understanding of it. Then a single tear embarked on a path from the duct of Nu's inner eye to the outer edge, and down their cheek, accumulating at the lowest point of their chin. The tear stayed there for a moment as if to attempt some existential contemplation. Then, when the buildup of its pensivity was too heavy to continue clinging, the tear dropped back into the lake, expressing salty contrast to a realm of fresh yet static homogeneity. There is much to be recovered by you in this universe, eminent Nukolo. The activation that this recovery waits upon is the will of your choice to act. You alone harness the ability to choose which parts of yourself you will reclaim. You alone have the wisdom necessary to heal the ruptures of a tattered soul, the sea which both mourns and longs for its greater self. Nu listened in quiet fortitude, while the arms gave this information freely in blips of telepathic encoding. There was, at the very least, real understanding between the three of them. At the very most, there was the joyful merging of souls. From the onset of their fusion to its eventual disintegration, there would always surely remain some semblance of their combined force of will. I can no longer stay in Emba's embrace. There has been much here that has empowered me, for which I am grateful, yet much more that has restricted me in accomplice to my past perspectives. I used to turn away from the unknown, thinking I was satisfied with all I knew and all I was. Now, I know better. Now, I seek more. Nukolo opened two sparkling eyes at the sun, enrapturing their next words with an imperial authority that met the hearts of all who heard. I accept my role in my life, Nu stated plainly. I am the OceanHeart. Powerful silence enveloped everything said. I will reinforce my 4 chambers and allow the blood to flow through seamlessly. I open myself to my own will, now and forevermore. The dragon spoke. Then we must go.